Hey, everybody. Welcome to the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. Very excited today. We have a very special guest for you, Chris Stein. He's from Blondie. You know that band, right?
I've heard of them.
Incredible. And he's going to be coming on and talking about all things Blondie. But first, let's get to this.
I have to say I'm deeply disappointed in what the last 2 years have shown. In my judgment, the Department of Justice has been politicized to the greatest extent I've ever seen in this country. And it has done a discredit to the Department of Justice, to the FBI, and to the administration of law in this country.
I also want to at least respond to your characterization of the department, which sure. I vigorously disagree with. I believe the men and women of the department pursue their work every single day in a nonpartisan and an appropriate
General
way.
Garland, when rioters descended on the homes of 6 Supreme Court justices, night after night after night, you did nothing. Have you brought a single case against any of these protesters threatening the justices under 18 U.S.C. Section 1507? Have you brought even one?
Senator, you asked me whether I sat on my hands, and quite the opposite. I sent 70 United States Marshals.
Why are you unwilling to say no? The answer is no. You know it's no. I know it's no. Everyone in this hearing room knows it's no. You're not willing to answer a question.
When you issued your directive, when you directed your criminal divisions and your counterterrorism divisions to investigate parents who were angry at school boards.
I did not do that. I did not issue any memorandum directing the investigation of parents who were concerned about their children. The memorandum was aimed at violence and threats of violence against a whole host of school personnel. It was not aimed at parents making complaints to their school board.
Attorney General, are you cultivating sources and spies in Latin Mass parishes and other Catholic parishes around the country?
No, the Justice Department does not do that.
How many informants do you have in Catholic churches across America?
I don't know, and I don't believe we have any informants aimed at Catholic churches.
Does your department have a problem with anti-Catholic bias?
Our department protects all religions and all ideologies. It does not have any bias against any religion of any kind. Decisions about how to go about this were made on the ground by FBI agents.
So you're saying you don't know?
I'm saying what I just said.
Which is that you're abdicating responsibility?
I'm not abdicating responsibility.
Then give me the answer. Do you think, in your opinion, you are the Attorney General of the United States, you are in charge of the Justice Department, and yes, sir, you are responsible. Yeah. So give me an answer. We're supposed to hate long guns and assault-style weapons. You're happy to deploy them against Catholics and innocent children.
That brings us to the first of our 2 big things for this week. That was Merrick Garland, who went before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week. I think it was Wednesday. The committee is controlled by Democrats, but as you heard, it was hijacked by people like Ted Cruz and John Kennedy. Not that John Kennedy, but this John Kennedy. And Josh Hawley. And I got to say, man, like, the fucking nerve of these people. Josh Hawley, you know, when he's like, you're the Attorney General. Well, you know what, Hawley, you're a U.S. Senator, and you went out and fucking fist bumped insurrectionists, right? You supported insurrectionists. So these are people that literally have been kissing Donald Trump's ass, the traitor in chief, kissing his ass for years now, still support him, still want him to be their nominee. Yet, yes, this week they spent 4 hours grilling Merrick Garland about Hunter Biden, about Taylor Swift tickets, about the persecution of Catholics. I mean, come on, this was insane.
I mean, I think we need to come up with an award for performance, because that was some great acting.
Well, but it wasn't great acting. That's the thing. It was
pretend. It was just all pretend. It's such performative nonsense that it's hard to even listen to without laughing. Especially Josh Hawley, which all I can think about is him running out of the Capitol.
Yeah. The big, brave, tough guy who was seen running like a roadrunner for his life. Matt, friend, if you're listening, you got to do like a whole Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Kennedy thing. And Kennedy, that voice, It's like Richard Pryor used to say, like when he was down south, like that accent makes the hair on the back of my neck.
But it's also pretend he's totally Ivy League educated and he's pretending to be bumfuck idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you. Attorney General. So that was kind of a sham, and it was a shame, and the disrespect, the way they talked to this guy, you know. I mean, when you think about Merrick Garland from a standpoint of professionalism versus, I mean, the whole notion of, you know, let's investigate the weaponization of the Department of Justice, whatever. It's just, all this is just like a freaking smokescreen to distract voters from, A, the fact that we almost lost our democracy, and B, they're so corrupt in their own party, and their constituents are brainwashed, like Taylor Swift tickets. This is literally what taxpayers need to be spending money on, to grill Merrick Garland on Taylor Swift tickets.
Just a funny aside, in today's Wall Street Journal, there's a piece about Merrick Garland being a major Swiftie. He listens to her all the time because of his 2 daughters.
Seriously?
Yeah.
There you go.
Taylor Swift, if you're listening to this podcast, which I know you are, we're desperate to have you on.
Yeah, you need to come on and talk about this whole Merrick Garland thing.
Yep.
So the second big thing of the week, we learned that was kind of a feud between the Department of Justice and the FBI over the Mar-a-Lago raid last summer. Now, apparently there's typically friction between the agents and the prosecutors and this kind of a thing. But this, we learned from texts and transcripts, whatever, that this went so far beyond that, to the point where it supports the theory that there is a true method to Donald Trump's madness in terms of intimidation and instilling fear, so that people who ultimately are in control of the mechanisms to hold him accountable may choose not to because they're afraid for their careers, afraid for their lives, afraid for public perception and reputation and legacy. And that's what apparently happened here, where the FBI was literally considering giving him a pass because they were just afraid. The agents were saying, like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid. And this is the essence of Trump's entire strategy. This is what he does. He doesn't really argue about the past or the present in terms of trying to make people afraid. What he does is he plans for the next thing, so that the next time you have to look at him, you're afraid because of what he did last time. And it's just, I don't know, it makes you wonder, like, is he going to prevail? Or like a guy like Alec Murdoch, is it finally going to catch up to him? I don't know. The jury is still out, because you look at the Murdoch family and you realize that this was a powerful family that controlled this town for 100 years. But eventually they did something bad. He did something bad, and he's going to pay the price. Maybe it's the same with Trump. Maybe all the years that Trump got away with everything, maybe this is the swan song. This is where how and where he goes to prison.
No, we hope so. I mean, he basically intimidated the FBI completely. And this goes back to January 6th. The GAO just released a report showing that the FBI had enormous amounts of information about January 6th and did absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, he poisons the electorate. So if you come after me and you have an amount of evidence and it's clear that I committed a crime, but all I say to you is you're coming after me because, you know, you hate people named Andy. And every day you hate people named Andy, and you're only doing this because you hate people named Andy. And over and over and over and over again, he turns the tables on them so that they become afraid that they're going to be accused of doing what he's accused them of. So he creates this entire narrative, and it works.
He's a great dictator.
He's a dictator. He's a master projector, probably a great masturbator. But it's just, you know, I hope what happens to him is what we're seeing with Alec Murdoch, that there is a price to ultimately be paid. All right, let's get to our winners and losers. Jen.
My winner, better late than never, Eli Lilly, for cutting insulin costs by 70% and capping patient insulin out-of-pocket costs to $35 or less per month. My loser, Iranian girls. Hundreds of schoolgirls across the country have been poisoned in what may be deliberate attacks designed to prevent girls from seeking an education.
My loser this week is an easy one. It's cartoonist Scott Adams, who encouraged segregation in a racist YouTube rant And of course, Elon Musk came out and supporting him because, well, it's Elon Musk. My winner this week, I'm going to go with a different species, is the Eurasian eagle owl, who's escaped from the Central Park Zoo nearly a month ago and has become one of the most inspiring characters in New York with his ability to adapt and hunt, even though he spent nearly his entire life in a zoo.
Interesting. My winner is Merrick Garland, who demonstrated patriotism, professionalism, and the patience of Job at the judiciary hearing. My loser, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who blamed Biden for the fentanyl deaths of a Michigan mother's 2 sons who actually died in 2020 under Trump. So when challenged by CNN, her spokesperson barked, "Do you think they give a fuck about your bullshit fact-checking?" Just think about that.
No.
They're angry because they got caught in a lie.
That's fantastic.
It is fantastic. All right, before we get to this week's rant, let's play this clip.
There's just some talk in China that maybe the transparency isn't everything that it's going to be. Do you trust that we're going to know everything we need to know from China?
I do. I have a great relationship with President Xi. We're working very closely with China and other countries, and we think it's going to have a very good ending for us. We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together. We're working with them. We just sent some of our best people over there. We're working with China, just so you know, and other countries very, very closely, so it doesn't get out of hand.
Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person.
I just want to get to the rant, but I just want to say to all you Republicans, we stuck at 8. We have 8 Republicans listening to this podcast now. That's your guy. That's your guy saying we got China under control. We have the pandemic. What the pandemic, schmandemic? It's one person. Maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he meant 1 million, because that's actually how many people died of COVID. But for anyone sitting here today saying, oh, it's unfair that Trump's blamed for COVID and he did nothing, just listen to that clip, okay? We're not worried at all about the pandemic. It's just one person. Okay. Well, that kind of dovetails into the rant, which is about Republican hypocrisy, which right now is raging out of control, and it's quite dangerous. The latest example of this was the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing Wednesday that you just heard some parts of, where several rude, disrespectful, fake-ass patriots like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley performed worse than actors in an Oklahoma dinner theater. The GOP is not the party of faith, of God and religion, of good Christian values. It's the party that mocks disabled people and cages kids and controls women's bodies and forces 11-year-olds to carry rapist babies. That is cruel and inhumane to refugees, LGBTQ, minorities, and those in need. The GOP is not the party of law and order. It's the party that beats the shit out of cops, wants to defund the FBI, and worships its mob boss, Donald Trump, who never met a law he didn't like to break. The GOP is not the Patriot Party. It's not the party of national defense. It's the party of deadly insurrection, one that attempts to overturn free and fair elections and overthrow the government. A party that will once again nominate a dangerous, democracy-raping dictator wannabe who blew Putin on stage at Helsinki, had a love affair with Kim Jong-un, and enables and empowers America's enemies and alienates our allies, like Ukraine. That's your Republican Party. Corrupt, treasonous, and broken as fuck. All right, it's time to bring out Chris Stein. He is the co-founder, songwriter, and guitarist of the iconic punk band Blondie. He's also an accomplished photographer and author. Chris, welcome into the back room.
Thanks, Andy.
I'm just going to say up front, for full disclosure, I'm a huge fan. My 70s, I was like 17 years old when you guys first hit. And
thanks for your support.
It was huge in my life. And like I think most young men, I was infatuated with Debbie Harry and had the hugest crush, and I still do. So I'm going to be shameless here and tell you that I'm a fanboy, and, I'm not embarrassed about that. So,
well, we appreciate the support, as I always say.
And so first thing I want to ask you, as someone who is now 60, I'm 63 and dealing with my own
73. I got 10 years on you.
So how are you doing these days? What's health-wise?
I'm okay. I'm
cool?
holding it. I'm slowing down. I got a bunch of bullshit, but I got a heart thing, and I had to get radiation for my prostate and all that crap, But it's all okay. Stabilized the prostate stuff. My levels are almost zero. So
The old prostate. Jesus.
yeah.
It's like men, like once you hit a certain age, it's like that
No,
word.
it seems inevitable. That's what my wife said. Everybody's gonna get it.
Yeah.
So,
But you have a great head of hair.
yeah, no, I've maintained. My grandfather had this hair, same hair.
Mine too. In fact, my grandfather literally, when he was like 85 years old before he died, literally had like you guys went to the same barber. So I think
Yeah. Well, I just haven't been out much, so I need a haircut. But my maternal grandfather, who actually I never met, I was close to my maternal grandmother, but him, I don't know, he went before I was born.
it's so funny. There are people that, like my maternal grandfather had a big head of hair. Like I have no issues with hair and probably never will. You don't. But then you have like these friends you've known who like went bald at 25, and it's just like luck of the draw, right?
No, I had a buddy who, like, when we were all like teenagers, whatever, 14, 15, he looked like he was 40. But then it all caught up to him, and I think he looks younger now than he did back then. It's all relative.
And some people, I always think that there are some people that look great bald because they have a great shaped head. I always think I wouldn't look good bald. Do you ever think about like what you would look like if you
Yeah,
were
of
bald?
course. Sure, everybody does. I know I never did it, so I don't know.
Do you think you have a good shaped head for baldness?
I have no idea. I can't tell. I don't know.
Well, thankfully, it's not a problem you have to worry about much.
Yeah, it's at the moment.
Tell me about when one of the things we love to do here is go back in time and peel away the onion layers and try to find out what people were like as kids. Well, you were a Jewish kid growing up in Brooklyn.
Yes, but parents weren't practicing. They were Reds.
Right.
So they were, wasn't subjected to any of the organized religious aspects of Judaism, luckily.
So are they reading you Karl Marx at night at bedtime, or?
No, I mean, I don't, I don't really know what their attraction to that was. Very famously, the FBI came to my house when I was a baby, and my old man later told me he gave them the names of the dead guy, and they went away happy. And I don't, they weren't. I wish I had pressed them more about that stuff, but they weren't pursuing it by the time I was around.
Mm-hmm. Well, the three people in this studio right now, including myself and my engineer and producer and an associate producer, we're three Jews, and I don't think there's a practicing Jew among us, right? Is it fair to say that? But atheism is the fastest growing religion, isn't it?
I suppose. I mean, I'm like, I consider myself an animist. I kind of like believe in like the Force, maybe. It's just everything has this life energy that intermingled amongst the universe.
So you think there's something there somewhere responsible for something, but you don't quite know.
I think responsible is no. I don't know if there's anything directing everything beyond itself. It's just the patterns of energy.
I'm an atheist with a capital A, but every once in a while I walk outside and I look around, I see cars and planes and people, and I'm like, how the fuck did all this happen? Like, did you ever think that? Do you ever like just stop and look and go?
Sure. Frequently.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you stop and think about it.
Everything's amazing on all levels. It's just if anything I learned from psychedelics, it was that stuff.
Well, we're going to talk about your dabbling in a little while, if you're okay with that. But so when you were a kid, were you musical as a kid?
I got a guitar. Yeah, I mean, I'm writing a memoir. I'm just closing in on it. Just have turned it over.
Oh, great.
It's going into the editing phase. I remember my parents playing Lead Belly when I was very little, because the editor said, "What did your parents listen to? You got to put that in there." So I got to put that in there. And then I just got, I was born like right in 1950. So I just reflect all the musical trends that my generation was subject to.
And
That
when did you get your first guitar?
12 when I was 1962 when I was 12.
Mm-hmm. And if you can just, what were the like, were you dying to get a guitar, or did your parents say, hey, you should play an instrument, you know?
I saw, some electric guitars out in the world and I thought they were very exotic and sexy, and was drawn to them. Just in the neighborhood and stuff. It was pre the Beatles or any of that stuff, So I just liked it. I probably, I was a big Flat and Scruggs fan early on. I picked up from the Beverly Hillbillies, but I went on to explore who they were, all that stuff. And then, in the folk music scene, everything, all that stuff was an influence.
And when you picked up a guitar, was it something that just became like when the minute you touched it, you knew this was your instrument? Like it was easy to play, chord progression, all that?
No, it wasn't easy to play because I didn't have any guidance whatsoever. So I just sat there and fooled around for a year. When I first picked up the guitar, I was really surprised that you pressed the strings down to get different notes. I don't know what I thought, that it only had 6 notes, but it was a revelation that there were the fret string relationship was there.
Strings are important in a guitar.
Yes.
I play the drums, and it's very primal, but I recently started taking guitar lessons. And the reason I asked the question is because I do believe that some people's dexterity, their fingers, their ability, it's almost impossible for me to do a barcode because my hand won't, I'm having a lot of trouble with it. And there are people that pick up a guitar and it's like magic. Like their fingers just work. It works. And I was curious if that was the way it was for you.
I've tried, and now it's just so second nature. It's weird. I mean, I don't really shred or do any of that fast, super fast, crazy stuff. But just, it's hard the relationship with the instrument is just what it is. It's just becomes an extension.
And did you ever take lessons when you first started playing, or you just taught yourself?
Playing along with records.
That's crazy.
When I first learned to play House of the Rising Sun, that was a breakthrough moment.
All self-taught.
Yeah. I mean, it took a couple of years before I would be happy just to sit there and do it.
Did you just listen to music over and over and over and over again? Yeah. And that's how you I remember listening to Howard Stern interview Bruce Springsteen, and Springsteen was saying how he just listened to records. He slowed them down, actually. He slowed them down so he can understand the guitar parts, and that's how he learned how to play.
I remember necessarily slowing the stuff down, but I still, to this day, will listen to the same song many times over and over if it's something that catches me.
And you're also a really accomplished photographer. And by the way, Bob Gruen says hi. He's our current episode this week. Fascinating guy.
Yeah, he's great. He's right around the block.
Yeah, I was just at his place the other day with him and his wife Elizabeth, and incredible photographer, incredible stories. But you are incredible as well. Was that something as a child when did photography become important to you, or an interest in your life?
I was always fooling around with little brownie cameras when I was a kid. Then I was influenced by a buddy of mine who was a really great photographer, this guy Dennis McGuire, who's not well known, but he was a terrific photographer. He used to shoot New York Times ads and all kinds of stuff. He was a big influence, and seeing Blow Up was a big influence on every generation that made everybody want to be photographers. I was always had it. I probably started around 68 seriously with an actual 35 millimeter camera, but my mom was a painter also, so it came from that environment. She was a good painter.
And so you went to SVA, School of Visual Arts?
SVA was great. All the way back then, it was great.
And what was your primary focus when you were in school? Was it photography?
I was in fine arts, but that was kind of the height of the conceptual arts period. So I found that much more of a romantic I found that stuff a little dry. I just kept gravitating more and more into photography. But
And
I had a great time. The voice was fantastic. I had a good time.
and at the same time you were there, was there like a parallel track of music and bands? Like were you in bands like when you were in college?
Yeah, I was always screwing around with bands, and my friends and me from Brooklyn were always jamming. That was ongoing. Famously, we opened for the Velvet Underground in 1967.
That was with the
I had-
first Crow on the Moon. Is that the?
I don't even
band?
know if that was a title that was floating around. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if that configuration was necessarily the Velvet Underground experience that we had. But a buddy of mine worked for Andy, Joey Freeman, who's I've known for 50 plus years. He decided he really liked Andy when he was 13, and he put on a suit and he went to the factory and asked Andy to interview him for his school newspaper. And Andy liked him, so they gave him a job as gopher and, odd jobs around there. And he used to go to Andy's house and wake him up. And he just showed up at my house in Brooklyn one day and said, listen, the opening act for the Velvets couldn't make it. Do you guys want to do it? So we all got on the subway. We went uptown. I guess, I don't know if it's the East or West 70s, this place called the Gymnasium. And the set with the Velvets, which was fantastic experience.
And
all around.
were you how aware of the Velvet Underground?
I knew who they were. Yeah, I totally had. We all had the record by then. I mean, the record was everybody was enamored of.
The Velvet Underground to me is, and maybe it's kind of not ironic that they're named the Velvet Underground, but to me, like one of the most underappreciated bands ever in music. There's a hardcore of music people and fans who love them, but I don't know, just seems like they should have been a bigger thing than what they were. I mean, I think some of their music is incredible. What Goes On to me is one of the best songs ever made.
Sure. I mean, Waiting for My Man is like the ultimate rock and roll song. I always try to think of what the ultimate rock and roll song is, and it's kind of like Louie Louie, Waiting for My Man. A couple of,
just even rock and roll, it's just there's some of their songs are like rival Zeppelin and any like of these mega famous, but they never had that kind of.
It's kind of in the context of all the angst and drug references and all that stuff that probably is off-putting to the mainstream. Also, the associations with Andy and the art world.
Interesting.
It's like Giger, who we've worked with, H.R. Giger, who's an incredible influential artist, has never really been accepted. He doesn't have anything in the MoMA, which is mind-boggling to me. And I think it's the Hollywood association a little bit, and the fact that people will get biomechanical tattoos. Maybe they consider it lowbrow or something. I don't know. It's beyond me. And maybe the same for the Velvets a little bit. People consider it too fringe, It's not as
that makes a lot of sense on some level, but then again, you just listen to the music.
I don't know. It's
unbelievable. Like you dissect every part of certain songs, and it's just so well constructed and just fantastic music and lyrics and importance.
But isn't like Walk on the Wild Side the song that everybody knows from Lou?
Yeah, well, that's right.
That's
the hit.
one.
Like they weren't. I guess they weren't a hit band. Like they didn't make They didn't make hits. They made music.
That's what's great about it, is that they didn't care.
Speaking of drugs, when I was a kid, you famously, or you've had your relationship with the narcotics, but did that start at an early age, or was that something that came later on?
We were always smoked. We were right there in the 60s counterculture, so we were just. I first smoked pot at the Newport Folk Festival in 1966. The first time I went there, which was the year after
Dylan, right?
At the fiasco. By the next year, by 66, that was all being embraced. There was no resistance to the electronic music. see
You know,
him.
it's interesting because I literally just talked with Bob Gruen about all of this because he was at the 65 Newport Festival. What do
I
you
wish I
think,
did.
as someone who's made a career playing electric guitar, like, what do you think was the major resistance in 65? Like, what freaked people out so
I
much
think
about
the
Dylan?
folky people just saw themselves as some kind of purists. Again, they saw it as lowbrow, the rock and roll world. I think, that they were more poetic and on a higher plane than whatever, than whoever was than Elvis or something. I'm not sure
But what, I
how
mean,
that
how
all.
do you listen to like a Dylan doing like a Rolling Stone and
That
not
was much later.
think it's
That's the
amazing? Like,
yeah, no, but that isn't that much later. That's several years later. But uh,
isn't that what he performed at 65? Isn't that what people freaked out with when he played like a Rolling Stone?
maybe I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's possible. Maybe I'm getting the dates wrong
Or even
on the
anything
thing.
electric that he did at
Well,
65? Like, how do you listen to that and going, wow, my God, this is not, it would be like listening to Sergeant Pepper and going, wait a second, this
it's
isn't,
nothing.
mop top
It's
stuff.
just like politics. It has nothing to do with wearing a mask or not wearing a mask and having your freedom infringed upon. It's just the context and the set and setting of the thing. As soon as I heard, I was into Dylan in the guitar voice days when I was a kid. I must have got into the second album. But when I remember Mr. Tambourine Man, when I first heard that, I was just completely floored and probably listened to that 1,000 times in a row.
Mm-hmm. Before we continue with music and Blondie, you mentioned politics, which is how we met. We're both active
Political sphere.
maniacs on
Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter is fucking nuts.
Yeah, and we met. I got the opportunity to meet you and Debbie. You guys were doing a town hall thing a few years ago before COVID, and got to chat with you. And I still remember talking with you, and then you turned to Debbie and you go, "Hey, this is Andy. He's really cool. He hates Trump too." And that's kind of how we met. What do you make quickly? What do you make about where are you today with the political opinions versus just a few short years ago?
It's astonishing what's going on now. Okay, my kids, like 2 days ago, my daughter and her boyfriend found one of 1,000 copy deluxe edition of Barry Goldwater's photography. So I was floored because it's nice, and famously there's a letter from JFK to Barry Goldwater saying you should stick to your chosen field, which is photography, something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And I had to explain what Barry Goldwater was somewhat with my daughter. And, the obvious, all of this stuff, him and William F. Buckley, all these guys are relatively level-headed, no matter how extreme their insane views were at the time.
Right.
You compare it to the current crop of lunatics. It's just a joke. So for me, I don't get too outraged by the whole stuff because it's so funny. It's just absurd. I know, whether or not America falls down some deep abyss of crazy, neo-fascism, maybe it'll be less funny, but I don't know. I think there's enough people on both sides, on the other side at this point. It's nuts. The whole fucking thing. I see everybody really was distrustful of Hillary. That was a major thing, Debbie said she should have just fucking gone on TV and cried, and people would have appreciated that, instead of being so performatively cheerful.
Yeah. Didn't she do that a little bit? Like, I want to say Iowa or New Hampshire. She did get teary about something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was almost like yeah, I totally look. I'm a huge Hillary fan and supporter, and I'm in many ways still with her. And I think she would have been an amazing president. But I am very aware, and I get the criticisms from a interpersonal kind of thing that you're speaking to, where she just could not, unlike her husband, she could not catch on, which is what a politician needs to do, you know?
Yeah.
And
No,
because of that, she's, you know, Trump became president.
Yep. It's nuts. The whole thing is nuts. All these fucking people now are nuts.
Yeah. Your daughter and my daughter, I think, are around the same age, I think 19, 17.
17
Is she political? Like, does she care about any of this stuff, or?
Not terribly. I find none of them. They're all into their social world.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, when you saw and heard Debbie for the first time, this is when you guys weren't in a band together yet. I think maybe she was with the Stilettos. Okay. What went through your brain? Did you have like a vision in that moment? Like, oh my God, this woman's amazing. We got to start a band together.
I was just very taken with her. I thought she was great and attractive, and pretty much what everybody saw later down the line. But it was just early on. So it was that. Yeah, she was. I was pretty smitten with her, I guess.
And so were you more smitten as a dude, or were you more smitten like, we can create an amazing band together?
I think the band stuff was a little secondary, but it was really part of, I mean, it was the whole music thing was well established at that point, and I was really interested in it. I was always striving to get something going, even though it was kind of undefined what something might be at that point. It was just sort of nebulous, just be able to do music. I don't even think I thought about recording or any of that stuff that early on.
Mm-hmm. And you know, for the kids, the young kids out there listening, I just got to tell you that back in the 70s, and even to this day, I mean, Debbie Harry is one of the most beautiful women that's ever graced this earth. And so, and just musically, when she came around, she was doing stuff that nobody else was doing, at least on a commercial level. So it was like this force of nature. And so I'm imagining when you saw her, you know, most guys always look at someone and be like, oh my God. Did you have that moment of like, I'm so confident I'm going to go after her and I'm going to get her? Or were you like, she's never going to pay me 5 seconds of attention? She's so awesome.
No, yeah, a little bit of both probably, but I don't know if I was, over the years, I've discovered it can't, if you're polite to somebody and approach them, it can't hurt. The worst that's going to happen is tell you to fuck off. So,
Right.
I mean,
well, yeah, rejection is like, most guys hate rejection, but which stops them from making that move. But you had to have been a pretty confident guy back then to.
We all knew each other in the scene, so there was an interrelation between everybody, and I just signed up for the band shortly after seeing them for the first time.
And when you guys first got together and formed the band, did you know that something amazing was happening, or did it take time for you to sort of get to that point of, wow, there's something really unique here? Or did you get that from the get-go?
It was it was a struggle for quite a number of years. And then quickly, there was a curve to it that went, I guess kind of through the slight elevation, then suddenly went very quickly upwards.
There's your first album, Blondie. I read something that this guy Ken Tucker, in 1977, Rolling Stone, he wrote a piece, and he said all the songs, quote, work on at least two levels, as peppy but rough pop, and as distant, artless avant rock. And he also noted that Debbie Harry performed with, quote, utter aplomb and involvement throughout, even when she's portraying a character consummately obnoxious and spaced out. There is a wink of awareness that is comforting and amusing, yet never condescending. And then he said about her, she's the possessor of a bombshell zombie's voice that can sound dreamily seductive and woodenly Mansonite within the same song. I read this, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like these, do you ever think like these
nice.
people? Well, but it's
I
like
get it.
so. He seems to me like, I don't know. Critics to me are in general like they sometimes get it. They can't get out of their own way.
There's a tendency back then amongst the music writers to get very involved in themselves. You know, I mean, Lester Bangs may be the
right.
You know, main character in that kind of a whatever you want to call it. But you know, our relationship with the music press, it's different now. You know, it's completely different because everything is based on physically seeing the artists in social media, whatever the fuck it is, internet streaming, blah blah blah. It's less ponderous and less it's less of room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's great. I mean, for me, all the criticism I really enjoy is film criticism. Like, you know, A.O. Scott is just a fucking genius. All those guys, but yeah, that kind of we saw kind of sunset on that very verbose rock.
Yeah, but I mean, like woodenly Mansonite. I mean, when he in 1977.
I get it. I mean, I have Charles Manson's record, which I used to listen to. And it's very funny because it's kind of wholesome in a weird way. You know, it's like, well, he's got a song called "Anywhere I Hang My Hat Is Home," which sounds like the fucking Carpenters or something. You know, it's just weird.
Well, that one song that the one that everybody always plays over and over again, the
Chance.
I forget the name of it, but like it's not bad. It's not bad. He totally should have stuck to music. I think he might have been more successful than his other vocation. But I just think, like, you know, it was not that long after the Manson murder, so I'm not sure I understand like the woodenly Mansonite reference. I don't know. I mean, maybe there could have been other ways to express what he was thinking, in my opinion. I don't know. It just seems a little harsh. But when you are also a co-writer of a lot of the great Blondie songs, what is your process? Do you start with lyrics? Do you start with music? Like, how does it form for you?
I would always be about recording. I would always have tape recorders that I would work with because I don't write. I never learned to read and write music. I have a lot of big holes in my musical development. Like our keyboard player, Matt, reads fluently.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, I wish I had spent time doing that stuff, but I never did it. So I would always be dealing with tape recording and multi-track tapes, 4 tracks, especially. A lot of the early stuff was from a TAC 4-track, which is a very specific animal.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever have any of these moments, like any of these like Neil Young moments, where you see something important and then you wander into the woods and come out in 20 minutes with Ohio?
No, it was just more about melodies. I would get some little melody in my head. I mean, so many, you know, there's so much stuff gets lost over the years because I just am too lazy or not near a tape recorder.
Mm-hmm.
But there's enough of it I would be able to put down in some form. It would be a little bit of translation from what's in my head to what goes on the tape, but it would happen.
You know, the songwriting process to me always seems so fascinating because, you know, everybody has a different process, and sometimes you have a partner, or you write lyrics, they write music, or sometimes you do both. But I loved watching the Beatles documentary where you literally see these geniuses in a room working through like what have become iconic songs, and just to see the birth of like from the concept to maybe the first verse, or just like dummy words, you know, like when McCartney is talking about like yesterday, I think he called it something else instead of, but it had the right number of syllables, you know. But how that all comes together when you're a musician is fascinating to me. And but no one seems to have like the same process. It all comes so differently to people.
Yeah, we, you know, I would get some little thing on tape. I mean, a lot of the earlier stuff was just done sitting around with a guitar with Debbie, but usually I would lay something down and she would then proceed to work on it and would embellish what she would have her own takes on the melodies.
You guys had you did 6 albums in 6 years. You sold 40 million records. Like, what's even more fascinating to me is, like, you guys reunited after you broke up in '82, but you reunited in '97. You had a #1 single in the UK with Maria, which I think was one of the best songs you guys ever did. That talent that never goes away, right? Even when bands break up, it's like, when you got back together, was it just like, did it just almost seem like you just picked up where you left off?
Gee, I don't know. I mean, yeah, certain aspects of it probably were similar. Maybe it's already so fucking long ago. The re-up of the band was '99 or whatever. It's amazing. I mean, it blows my mind that 2003 was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
At this point, it's crazy.
What was the root of the breakup in '82?
Oh, just everything. Just drugs, me getting sick, bad management, bad accounting, just, the usual, very typical showbiz story of being screwed over.
I wanted to backtrack for a second about Bob Gruen. When we were talking about Debbie, I had asked him who he thinks, over all the years that he was taking photos, who was most photogenic. And he was like, yeah, like Debbie Harry. Debbie Harry, can't take a bad picture of Debbie Harry.
Yeah, that's what it is. He just looks crazy.
Is it correct to say that you guys kind of really burst when Call Me was in American Gigolo? Was that like a seminal moment for the band?
That was the biggest song, but we had the real breakout stuff was earlier in Europe, like Denis, the cover of the Randy and the Rainbow song, just swept all around Europe. And then, Heart of Glass too. There were a lot of those moments. Call Me was the biggest song, though.
Was it a surprise when the movie people came to you and said, we want you to be a part of this and write some stuff for the...
It was a very funky artistic level, Paul Schrader and Gear and Moroder later approached us. We initially remember hanging out with Richard and taking him to 48th Street to buy a guitar, and Schrader and we just went to a hotel room and watched a cut of the movie on a little funky old TV.
And how did that song come to be in that film? Did it take a while for you to come up with?
Giorgio. They had got Giorgio aligned with the movie, and I've heard over the years that, I don't know, maybe that there were some other candidates, maybe Stevie Nicks or this one or that one, but we wound up doing it, and it was a nice experience, and Giorgio is a great character.
There's some, music and movies, like there are some films where the soundtrack and the music is as important as the film itself, as the content, the acting, the cinematography. Martin Scorsese is a genius when it comes to pairing music to film. It's hard. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Scorsese is like mining your memories. He's doing that stuff of all that nostalgia aspect. When you see Goodfellas and it's got all those songs that you grew up with.
Layla.
All clicking these beats,
Yeah, but
I'm a real critic of film scoring these days because I think it's overdone. And I see so many movies, so many films where the soundtrack becomes like a laugh track, where it's just to steer you into having certain emotions. If you look at something like No Country for Old Men, it has has zero soundtrack music whatsoever. Is so brilliant. I grew up on movie soundtracks before I was into pop music. I was listening to Lawrence of Arabia and Irma la Douce and all this stuff. West Side Story, of course, was all very formative to me. And it's weird. It hasn't quite progressed, the way I would like it to. Rhoda, all the Fellini stuff is just so genius.
Well, it's hard to imagine American Gigolo without that song. It is
Yeah.
such a it's so inextricably tied to everything about the film and the zeitgeist of that era and the Armani clothes and just and
Well,
it's
that's what the clothes and the color palette of the clothes is
Mhm.
what that color me or color line is about. I mean, Debbie was very inspired by that stuff. You know, that was before anybody knew who the hell Armani was.
Yeah. No,
Also.
it's groundbreaking on so many levels, but it's just it's always been fascinating to me how someone can come up with something that is such a perfect fit. Like that you have that kind of talent to go. Someone says, "Go away and bring back a song that's going to work in this movie," and
Well,
it becomes.
it was a lot on Giorgio. I mean, it
Mhm.
was certainly equal parts Giorgio and
Mhm.
Debbie.
And so you guys you put out Heart of Glass, which kind of has like a disco-y little thing to it. I was wondering because you came out at the same time that disco was the rage. And I'm wondering what your thoughts were on that period and that kind of music. And
Totally liked disco music. I had no problems with disco music.
so you weren't
I
stepping
liked
on all the records.
Oh no, disco music was great. It's just part of R&B to me.
Mm-hmm.
There was such great, stuff coming out of the disco world. I was always totally into it.
And one of the things that I love hearing, like Paul McCartney often he gives backstories to certain songs, which I think he did a book not too long ago, a couple of years ago, perhaps, that, he goes into some of their major songs and just gives a little genesis of where they come from. I don't know if you have that kind of thing with Blondie, where how certain songs took on certain meaning, or there's an interesting enough story. I know certainly there is a great story about In the Flesh and Ex Offender as sort of being the launch in a way of the band based on a mistake. But if you want to speak to that for a second, I'd love to hear that.
Well, Ex Offender was about Gary's, our original members, Gary Valentine's situation with his girlfriend, where he had, he was being pursued by this girl's parents after he came of age, and he was, long story, and it's better. I hesitate to get into it too much, but he had trouble basically because of a youthful romance. So that was the inspiration for Ex Offender.
And then it was there was a TV show.
I don't. Okay, yeah, no, I don't. Over the years, I used to buy into that story, but at this point, the last 15 years, I've always thought that Molly Meldrum, who was a genius present TV host, he was the Australian Dick Clark. I just think he knew what he was doing, and he knew what the market was for the song. So the story that it was a mistake, that it was the B-side was played by mistake, is a good story, but I don't know if I buy it.
Well, I read that you said, quote, I over the years I've thought they probably played both things but liked one better. That's all.
Maybe that too.
Mm-hmm.
I think Molly's a very smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a TV presenter down there.
So when Parallel Lines, the third album, came out, that was like it exploded. What was that like? I mean, I always wonder, like, when a band puts something out, did you know that album was that good and was going to be that well received and really change the course of the band's trajectory?
The album was floating around on the charts for 6 months. For 6 months before Heart of Glass was released. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of indication. The only song I was really positive was going to be a hit was Tide is High. Mm-hmm. Out of everything.
Interesting. Why?
Because I had the original, which is genius. Dick Holt and the Paragons, and I just knew if we could pull off a successful version of it, it would click with people.
And the style that you guys chose to record that in, like, that seems really specific, but also kind of risky.
The Tide is High?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just, I don't, as far as being risky, I just always did stuff that I liked. I mean,
Right.
we always did stuff we liked. The mariachi stuff, I've always been into roots and world music. And that was just an extension of that, my affinity for that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to throw out names of songs, and if there's an interesting story that you want to share, by all means. Dreaming, big hit.
Oh, Joel, Dreaming is very much inspired by Dancing Queen by ABBA.
Interesting.
Dancing Queen. It's got that tiny little
Dreaming.
reference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's that. I mean, I always loved ABBA. They were great.
Mm-hmm. Sunday Girl.
Sunday Girl is again, started out as more of like a roots, almost calypso, Afro-Caribe thing, and then evolved into this rock song, and vaguely about our cat who ran away.
So I was going to ask you, who is there a girl that it's, but so now, and you're telling me it's about a cat.
Well, it's all, it's a little autobiographical about Debbie somewhat, but it's also about Sunday Man. Debbie had a cat named Sunday Man.
Interesting.
He ran away when we were on tour. It was very tragic.
One of my favorites is Rip Her to Shreds, Miss Groupie Supreme. I'm wondering if there was a real Miss Groupie Supreme.
No, it's kind of a conglomerate of people. I don't think it was anybody specific. It's very much Waiting for My Man reference. That song.
And then there's a great title, let alone the song, Die Young, Stay Pretty.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was like all semi-reggae, hard reggae thing early on. It was just going along with the sentiment. That was a catchphrase at the time.
Mm-hmm. And there's two monster hits that have just been branded into my brain over the years, like millions and millions of people, One Way or Another, and Hanging on the Telephone, which is, to me, one of your best songs. That song is truly amazing.
Yeah, well, Hanging on the Telephone is a cover. Most people don't get that it's a cover of the Nerves Telephone, and I recommend everybody listen to the original, which is not as big and aggressive. It's a little more toned down and Beatlesque. It's really great track, though.
And One Way or Another?
One Way or Another is just what it is. That was just developed in the studio. I think, is Nigel a writer on that? I can't remember who is a writer on that. I think it's Nigel.
Is there a story to I'm going to get you?
It was a little bit about Debbie being stalked by some guy early on when we first met.
Not you.
No, she had some stalker boyfriend from New Jersey or something.
Oh, I did read that once. Yeah, I read that. Fade Away and Radiate, great song.
Fade Away and Radiate was about Debbie falling asleep with the TV on, which I suspect she still does at this point.
No, put me in that category too. Who doesn't do that, right? In 2006, you guys were inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, I've listened to so many performers over the years, and there are people that are like, oh my God, that was the greatest accolade ever. And then there are performers that are like, I don't give a shit about that stuff. Like, where were you guys when that happened? Was that a big deal? I mean, at the risk of sounding like this is a dumb question, but was that a big deal for the band?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, mostly by extension of other people thinking it was a big deal. And I frequently said I got congratulated more for that than I did for having children. But, yeah, I mean, the Hall of Fame is a little skewed, the whole thing. It shouldn't be called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It should be called the Popular Music Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's the museum itself is fucking great. And those people are great. But there's just something weird about the whole setup. You having to have every year having to have people that are not voted for, so they're an out group, is really weird. I mean, I like to be able to vote every year. It's nice. They send you the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had it around here, but I got to mail it off yet.
Was it Dolly Parton recently who like refused to participate, but mainly for the reasons you were just talking about?
The year we were inducted, the Sex Pistols just wrote a letter, said "fuck off," and
Shocking.
go. Yeah, we don't care.
Uh-huh.
Worse.
And there was some, stop me if I'm touching on a sore spot here, but there was some drama when you guys were inducted, when two of your bandmates, Frank, that was a pretty awkward moment.
Yeah, Frankie decided it was a good idea to complain about. But I mean, I hadn't heard from the guy in 20 years except in court. So it was just, if he had called me up, I might have considered.
Right. Yeah, no, it was one of those like Kanye, Taylor Swift kind of moments.
Yeah. No, I mean, it kind of eclipsed the Sex Pistols being rude,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of great. I mean, it's just no bad publicity, as they say.
Yeah. As a guitarist, who are the guitarists that you either felt were most influential on you, or that you just as someone who plays guitar looks at them and is like, wow, they are beyond?
Well, a lot of the old guys. Hendrix, I only saw Hendrix the one time at Woodstock, but I was always a huge Hendrix fan. Stuff is just, it still holds up. It's so genius. And
I'm Hendrix was, my teenage years was also hugely about Hendrix and still is.
John Fahey, you know who John Fahey is?
No.
He's Fahey, John Fahey it's all, I don't know, it's folk blues based, acoustic guitars, slide guitars, just solo guitar music, genius, big influence. Mike Bloomfield, Mike Bloomfield was? Played with Paul Butterfield, and played with Dylan, also in that same period, that the folky electric crossover period. There's a lot of people out there.
And what about more contemporary? Like, are there people today?
I don't even pay attention to a lot of music ever. I mean, like, something like Clem, our drummer, knows every fucking person in every band ever existed. And I'm just like so not like that. I'm so, I know a basic core of stuff, and I hear a lot of great music all the time, but frequently it'll be I'll hear just like a couple of bars of something on some cat video that I'm looking at, and then I'll go, oh wait, what is that? And then I, find some track that I like, or I'll I hear something in a movie or a, TV show that I think is great, and then I'll pick up on it like that. So stuff that comes in front of my face is how I get new music. I'm not like actively running around looking for new bands, because there's so much stuff now. It's just fucking nuts.
What do you think about the music today? I mean, I'm like my daughter, like, we have a house upstate, and we drive 2 hours up, 2 hours back, and then she would always ask me, can I play my music? And sometimes I literally wanted to drive the car off the road and slam into a tree because it was so awful.
I like everything. I don't know what she's listening to, but I like a lot of stuff. I was just watching this Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. I fucking love Bill Burr. And I was just watching some something he did with a bunch of comedians, with like a little showcase of a bunch of his buddies. And this guy did a version, very unmusical. He wasn't a good singer, but they had a band. They did a version of Teenage Dream, Katy Perry's Teenage Dream, and it's such a great song. I mean, this fucking guy who can't sing, and it's just such a great song, And I can't get around that stuff. And there's a lot of, I have that Major Lazer track, Lean On. Do you know Lean On? That, what's his name? Oh, the guy, Diplo and Major Lazer. That track I just listened to a billion times. It's just so good. I mean, that's a bunch of years ago already. But I hear a lot of stuff that I really like. I like Cardi. I like a lot of the hip hop stuff,
Oh, that's a revelation. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's good quality music out today, but then I'm a child of the '60s and '70s and even '80s, and it's like it's hard. But I guess like I don't want to be one of those people that when they watched Elvis back in the '50s were like, no, you can't. That guy is no good, and he's this and he's that.
Yeah,
So
no, it's
you
there's
know, you
great
like,
music all the time. It's
yeah,
always great stuff. My comment on that is there was always crap, but people only remember the good stuff.
right.
You know,
So back to Blondie for a second. What is do you have songs that you guys did that stands out? Like it's this couple of songs and then there's everything else. Like what is your favorite Blondie material?
it's kind of not like that. You know, I mean, it all. I just, we just did a podcast with Niall just recently, just the other day, and he played a bunch of tracks in the background, and he played this one track of ours called "Island of Lost Souls." And now I can't get it out of my fucking head. But it's not like I have a favorite. They're all just like movements of a larger piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like. I mean, some things that were successful and clever, I like. We're very proud of Rapture and that we were accepted by the hip hop community.
Mm-hmm.
For, and Die to High is a great thing. John Holt,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it was a terrific experience, and I can't, Mike Chapman, I was working with our producer Mike Chapman was just very fortuitous, and he was great. He was like the George Martin of
Mm-hmm.
Blondie.
A lot of people refer to Rapture as like the first hip hop song. What's your take on that?
We'd heard Rapper's Delight, and I'd heard a few things, and then Freddie took us up to this event in the South Bronx in '77, and it was just very eye-opening and exciting, and it just seemed like a no-brainer to reference it.
Yeah, well, very, very pioneering. The music business has changed so much over the years. I'm curious to know from your perspective, if you have an opinion on either side, how has it changed in a way that's been really advantageous and beneficial for younger performers coming up, and how has it really damaged the process and hurt the process?
Well, the fact that you can just get your music out so easily, just sticking stuff on YouTube, but then it's just a drop in a vast ocean of stuff. The touring process is so much easier now than it used to be. I mean, it was really, it was back in the '70s and '80s, it was very Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
And now, you got all that Live Nation stuff and all this. It's just a whole different thing. But there's a way to connect. I see a lot of younger bands on social media, on Instagram, whatever, connecting with groups of fans and developing their own audiences. That's a good thing. And if you're good and you have something to offer, it's going to rise to the surface to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm. How do you think it would have been if Blondie hit the scene today?
I don't fucking know. It would just have to be reconfigured. It would be something different with or electronica or whatever. I don't exactly know what it would be. Now, I mean, I see like my daughter has friends her age, 17-year-olds doing a band, and I follow their antics.
Mm-hmm. So. I want to talk in our remaining couple of minutes. I want to talk to you about your photography. You did 2 books, Me Blondie, Negative Me Blondie and the Advent of Punk, Point of View, Me New York City and the punk scene. You mentioned you have a
third coming out.
A third photography book, not the memoir.
Yeah, our Adventures with Giger is coming out on April 18th. So, damn, I'm blanking on the publisher, but on Titan, Titan book. So,
and what do you choose? What turns you on the most when you're holding a camera? What are you looking to shoot the most, or does it always change?
Lots of stuff. Yeah, it's changing, but I just like the aspect of composition, and I like the aspect of time travel, of capturing these moments. I love looking at old photography.
And you shoot a lot in black and white.
Yeah, I use my phone now. The phone is great. I'm very forward about everybody having a camera. I think it's terrific on many levels. A lot of great stuff is captured. People that are not photographers still will come up with that one great image. That's just a fantastic thing. People are able to oversee stuff, like all these police actions and stuff. All that stuff would be non-existent if people weren't, all holding video cameras.
Do you think it's all the opportunities people have with their iPhone with filters and like to make photographs that may not necessarily be terribly authentic in what they're...
Well, I don't deal with that shit. I tweak, a little bit of contrast, saturation and stuff like that, but I never deal with that shit.
And as a photographer, you feel like the iPhone is as good as any these days?
Good camera. Yeah, sure. Good camera.
Do you think kids are missing out on something when they don't have their own little brownies to go and then go in a dark room and develop?
Maybe. I mean, you don't. Nobody's learning about f-stops and ISO and film speed and all that stuff. It's just some of that is getting lost in the shuffle in the automatic nature of things now. But that's bound to go like that. I mean, even the digital cameras I use, I just sometimes will just stick them on automatic and just let them figure it out themselves.
Does your daughter has the gene pool given her any musical or photographic interest or talent?
The younger daughter identifies as an artist completely. The older one does writing stuff like that. But the total is she's gonna probably go to art school coming up.
Oh, that's cool. Well, Chris, you've been incredibly generous with your time. This has been fascinating. There's so much to talk about. I literally could have sat here for 6 hours.
I don't know what else to think. About stuff. I don't know what's. I'm hoping for the best for America.
Yeah. No, we you should come back again. We can talk about things that may not necessarily be musical. But I did also want to point out, you're not only generous with your time today. I made a documentary, as you know, about my late wife, Adrienne Shelley, and there's a song. We have "Dreaming" in the song because it's a scene where Adrienne bursts onto the scene in the early '90s, and when we were editing and put the footage together, all I heard was boom, 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 boom. It's just like throwing her out into the world. And you were very generous and supportive of the film and the song, and it's hard for me to imagine the film I made without that song in it. So I want to thank you again for that. And people should know that you're a generous guy. So, and a good guy. So hopefully you'll come back again and we can talk some more. And maybe I'll see you wandering around the village.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, man.
Take care. That's episode 48. If you like what you've been hearing, and even if you don't, let us know. We appreciate the feedback. You can leave us a message at 845-307-7446. Email us at backroomandy@gmail.com or tweet to me at Andy Ostroy. And when you listen, please take a quick moment to rate and review. It's very helpful. I want to thank my co-producer, engineer, and editor, Matty Rosenberg, associate producer, Jen Hammoud, Cricket Lengyel for our artwork, Andy Hollander for our kick-ass music, Patricia Wynn and the Epicurean for the Backroom Studio, and a big thank you again to our guest, Chris Stein. So keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great week.